As we head into this offseason, today I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 college football playoff contenders for this upcoming 2021 through 22 college football season. And I understand we are still pretty early on to be talking about the college football playoff as of now. These are just my top 10 contenders for this upcoming season, and this should give you kind of an idea as to what you guys can look forward to as we head into this brand new season and who could possibly be contenders at the top. These will also be in no particular order. Each of these 10 teams I do think will be contenders, but this video will not be having them in any particular order. That being said, we're going to start off with your first one, which is obviously going to be Alabama. We can't really down on Alabama, I think, until Nick Saban retires. Like, this team is going to continue to be contender. They just got too good of recruiting right now, and this team in general has got way too much talent to doubt them, and they continue to consistently bring in great recruiting classes. There's no reason. I mean, if you look at Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback for this team next season. He's looking to take over under center for Alabama, considering Mac Jones is taken off. I mean, he's going to be just fine, I think. I mean, we've seen Alabama go through several outstanding quarterbacks: Tua, Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones. I think Bryce Young is going to be the next one of those, and I really think Alabama in general, too good of a team right now to doubt on them. And once again, until Nick Saban retires, there is no reason to believe that Alabama is not going to be a contender. But once again, this team is losing a decent amount of talent. If you look at this team's depth chart going into next season, they are losing a decent amount of skill players especially. But once again, with all the depth that Alabama's got next season, there is no reason to believe that this team won't be back. Second one is going to be Clemson, and this team, they do have Trevor Lawrence taken off for the NFL draft now, so he will not be with the team next season. But DJ Uiagalelei is going to be taking over at quarterback for Clemson, and if you look at this player, he did play some last season when Trevor Lawrence was gone with COVID, and really, I mean, when we saw him play under center, he was an outstanding quarterback. He really had a ton of potential last season, especially when he was playing for the first time. And I mean, if you look at his stats, he put up over 1,000 yards, and he only played for a couple of games last season. So he's got a ton of potential moving forward. They're kind of similar to Alabama in the factor that they're losing a few skill players, but the depth is excellent for Clemson next season. This team has got a lot of potential going into next year, and really they're not going to have to deal with Notre Dame in the ACC next season. So even though they do have to play Georgia to start off the season, Georgia's going to be a tough game there in September. I still think Clemson has definitely got a good chance to move forward right back to the college football playoff, mainly because the ACC is going to be easier this season, and it's going to be pretty easy for them to sweep the ACC next season. So for Clemson, that's good news for them. It won't be as hard to get to the college football playoff next season. But the defensive side looks great for Clemson. This team really is not losing any key starters on the defensive side. So Clemson, I expect to be right back in the conversation for the CFP next year because of that. Next one is going to be Oklahoma. The Sooners this year are going to be for real. This is a team that I think a lot of people don't really know that is going to be good next season, but they're going to be really good. This team is returning some of the best returning production in the nation. I mean, if you look at this team, like last year, they had a slow start, and the reason why they had a slow start in 2020 was because of how much they lost after the 2019 season. This team was very young at the start of the year. They were pretty inexperienced, but once they kind of warm up to each other and Spencer Rattler started to get better, this team really started putting up the Jets, and this team ended up winning the Big 12 because of it. I mean, this team was 1-2 at the start of the year, and they just completely had a huge winning streak and ended up getting a huge win against Florida even in their bowl game. This team is on fire right now, and this team is going to be right back in the conversation, make it back to the college football playoff next season. I mean, Spencer Rattler is a great quarterback. He's going to be a player to really watch out for next season. Definitely be on the lookout for him. He's going to have a breakout year, I can tell you right now. The defensive side has got a minimal amount of losses as well. Definitely something to watch out for. Main team in the Big 12, though, that could come to be a threat for Oklahoma is Iowa State. Watch out for Iowa State. They're kind of in the same position as Oklahoma. I mean, they were somewhat inexperienced last season, but Iowa State, I mean, they're returning a ton of talent going into next season. Watch out for them as well. Oklahoma, though, is going to be our third one. Next one is going to be Georgia. Speaking of which, quarterback JT Daniels leads this team, or he led this team to an excellent second half of the season in 2020. Of course, they had Stetson Bennett starting at quarterback because, of course, Jamie Newman had opted out of the season, and then you also had JT Daniels, who was injured. So this team really did not have a excellent starting quarterback at the start of the year. And now that they had JT Daniels starting, I mean, JT Daniels really led this team to a great second half of 2020, and he really showed how much potential this Georgia team has. And if they can stay healthy, this team easily can match up to Alabama next season. I think we could, like, remember that one season when Alabama played Georgia in the national championship. This could be another season kind of like that. I think Alabama's going to be great, but Georgia is definitely going to be right back up there in that conversation. I could see them easily being a team similar to Florida from last year. Florida won the SEC East, ended up having a great season, and even though they kind of fell off towards the end, Georgia, I easily could see them being right back in that position in a New Year's Six bowl game at least, and definitely in the college football playoff. I could easily see that happening as well. Huge potential, great returning production. Georgia will be right back in that conversation. Next one is going to be Ohio State. The Buckeyes look to continue to be the primary contender in the Big Ten once again. This team really has been the one team in the Big Ten to represent their conference in the college football playoff, and I really think Ohio State is going to continue to do so. I mean, this team has got such great recruiting. Ryan Day continues to do a great job as the head coach of the Buckeyes, and even though they lose Justin Fields, they've got 3 very promising quarterbacks in Ohio State right now. It should be very interesting this spring and summer to see who can win that quarterback position, because I mean, you got 3 quarterbacks who definitely could win that position right now. Recruiting class coming in is excellent, tons of potential for Ohio State going into next year. I honestly think, I mean, Ohio State's got some great recruiting. This team is going to be tough to beat in the Big Ten next season. I easily could see them winning the conference again. I mean, the Ohio State continues to be very, very impressive in the Big Ten. And in the Big Ten East, I mean, it's going to be a little bit tougher this season to get past Indiana, but I think Ohio State still is going to have a lot of potential to make it back to the playoff. Next one is going to be Iowa State, and this is the other team in the Big 12 that I could easily see being a major contender. This team and Oklahoma are both going to be top 10 teams for the majority of next season, I really do think. I think Iowa State, with the returning production that they got Brock Purdy back. Matt Campbell's done an excellent job with this team. Breece Hall is also coming back. Breece Hall is going to be possibly the best running back in the nation next season. I really do think. Well, he's definitely going to be up there. He's going to be a top 3 running back for sure. I mean, he already was pretty much this season. He put up some outstanding yardage, outstanding stats overall. But Iowa State, this team is returning a ton of talent going into next season. This team has got a lot of potential going on. They got both sides of the ball returning once again a ton. The defensive side is also something you don't want to sleep on. This Iowa State team is for real going into the 2021 season. Brock Purdy also continues to improve over the course of the 2020. He already continued to improve. I mean, he's got a ton of potential as well. Next one is going to be North Carolina, main team out of the ECC this upcoming season, other than Clemson that I could see make it to the playoff. They're pretty similar to Iowa State in having the outstanding returning production. Sam Howell, he's going to be excellent next season. He could easily have a breakout year. Watch out for him. I mean, if you look at him in 2020, he already has improved a ton over the past couple of seasons. Even dating back to his freshman season, he was putting up outstanding numbers, and really, he continues to improve. And I think North Carolina next year is going to be the main team outside of Clemson to be a big contender. We usually see one team other than Clemson in the ACC be a big contender. North Carolina is going to be exactly that next season. And even though it's going to be tough to get past Clemson, if anyone's going to get past Clemson in the ACC this upcoming season, it's probably going to be North Carolina. I mean, Miami could be pretty good next season as well, but North Carolina, I think, is the team right now. But yeah, if they can get past Clemson, that's all they got to really do, which Clemson, they're going to be pretty tough. But if you look at your next one, it's going to be Texas A&M out of the SEC. Kellen Mond leaving is going to be the main concern for the Aggies this upcoming season, but there's still a lot of potential with Haynes King if he does win the position. The quarterback battle is going to be tough in Texas A&M as well, but it looks like Haynes King will more than likely be your starting quarterback. Once again, a lot can happen over the course of an offseason, but lots of depth in many positions for Texas A&M. This team is definitely looking like a main contender in the SEC this upcoming season. Only problem for Texas A&M, like this team could have easily been in the college football playoff last season. They just can't get past Alabama. That's the main problem for this team, and why they can't make it to the college football playoff is you first got to get past Alabama, which Alabama is a really good team right now, and this team is, I mean, Alabama is definitely going to be beatable this upcoming season, but Texas A&M is going to have to be very consistent over the course of the season, and also that quarterback position cannot have any issues. But otherwise, Texas A&M, I think, is the main team in the SEC, along with Georgia, that will mainly be the big competitor to Alabama. Moving on to Oregon. Oregon's going to be the main team in the Pac-12. I think that could be a big contender. I mean, USC is not going to be far behind. Tyler Shuck is actually transferring away. That happened just as these graphics were being made. So honestly, you could easily slide USC into this position now with Cannon Slovis coming back. I mean, USC or Oregon, I'd probably say, will be or should be in this position here, because I mean, in the Pac-12, you got 2 main teams, Oregon and USC, that definitely are going to be your main contenders. It's just a matter of who wins the conference. I think Oregon and USC are going to make it to the Pac-12 championship game next season. They're both going to win their respective divisions. It's just a matter of who wins. So we could easily see a team in the college football playoff out of the Pac-12 this year. I mean, it's more than likely the champion of this conference has to be undefeated. We do have to understand that too, because the Pac-12 is usually lower on the strength of schedule meter there. And of course, if you look at Oregon, they got great recruitment as well. And even though Tyler Shuck is transferring away from Oregon, this team still has got some great recruitment moving on. And other than USC, this Pac-12 looks to be wide open, really. I mean, Oregon could easily take that position. USC could. Should make for an interesting 2021 season for sure in the Pac-12. Lots of potential, though, across the board for Oregon. And even though USC, I could easily see USC being in this position, Oregon could easily be too. Moving on to Notre Dame. Notre Dame is back to being an independent after playing their 2020 season in the ACC, which honestly, I'll be honest with you guys, I think Notre Dame, they need to be in the ACC. Like, this team is too high caliber of a team to be an independent. And yeah, they're back to being an independent this upcoming season. They got a ton of pressure for doing so, but they lose their quarterback Ian Book. He had a great 2020 season, but Wisconsin quarterback Jack Cohn is actually transferring to Notre Dame, so he's now going to be the quarterback for Notre Dame more than likely this upcoming season. Jack Cohn was about to have an outstanding 2020 season until he had injuries. Like, if you look at this Wisconsin team, they were a big disappointment last season, mainly because, I mean, they didn't really have a very good quarterback to rely on. Graham Mertz was a great quarterback last year, but, I mean, Jack Cohn could have easily led this team, I think, to a Big Ten title. But Jack Cohn is now with Notre Dame, and if he can stay healthy, I think Notre Dame will be just fine. The main thing for Notre Dame here, they're losing a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but they got great depth going in. They got a great recruiting class. And even though Ian Book's leaving, like, Ian Book would be the main concern for this team, the main concern for the losses, but they got Jack Cohn coming in, which Jack Cohn has already got a decent amount of experience. So this Notre Dame team, I think, will be just fine going into next year. And lastly, those wrap up your 10 main contenders for the college football playoff next season. These are some honorable mentions. I consider putting Cincinnati in this list, but the only problem is the committee is not putting any Group of 5 teams in the playoffs. So until we have an 8-team playoff, which we need to have an 8-team playoff, by the way, Cincinnati is going to continue to be an honorable mention. This team is only going to get in if the committee somehow changes their mind and accepts the Group of 5 teams. Like Cincinnati, they did lose to Georgia in their bowl game last season by a short margin, by the way. But Cincinnati, I definitely think, could be a contender. Like, they got so much returning production. This team is looking great. I think we could see a season pretty similar for Cincinnati this upcoming year. In comparison to UCF back in 2017, we saw UCF had a huge season. They declared themselves national champions pretty much because they'd beaten Auburn, which Auburn had beaten Alabama. That's a whole different story. But for Cincinnati, this team has got the potential to be kind of on the same skill level that they had that one season. So Cincinnati, watch out for them. Florida is also on this honorable mentions list, mainly because they got to get past Georgia. Georgia and Florida is probably going to be your main two teams in the SEC this upcoming season. I've actually got Georgia winning the division right now ahead of Florida, mainly because of the returning production that Georgia has. But Florida, I'm going to keep them as an honorable mention, mainly because they still got a great recruiting class and some good depth. LSU is also going to be on this list. I really consider putting them in the top 10, mainly because they're returning as much as anyone. And this team, I mean, they went from being national champions in 2019 to being one of the worst teams in the conference last year, but they improved a ton over the 2020 season, for one. And for two, when you got Ed Orgeron, who's as good of a coach as anybody, and you got a great returning production and great recruiting, this team, I think, will be right back to being a ranked team next season. LSU just had one bad year. It was one bad year after a outstanding year, and I think LSU is going to be right back to being a contender. USC is also on this list if they can get past Oregon, which I'd actually favor. Now that Tyler Shuck has transferred out of Oregon, I'd actually favor USC to win the division right now. Obviously, a lot can change, but USC I'd probably say is my favorite right now with Keaton Slovis. They're going to be very good next season. Wisconsin is your last one here. After an inconsistent 2020 season, there are doubts, but some promising factors for Wisconsin for sure. This offense always has a ton of depth. This team is losing Jack Cohn, but otherwise, I mean, Graham Mertz, if he can improve, this Wisconsin team could be a contender, and especially if they can get past Ohio State. I mean, the division is pretty much in their hands there if they can just get past Iowa. So Wisconsin's basically, I mean, of course they're a season away, but they also, I mean, if you can get past Ohio State in the Big Ten championship for once, Wisconsin could be in the playoff for sure. So that being said, those are your honorable mentions, and this is my list for the top 10 biggest contenders for the college football playoff this upcoming season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, though, on this list. If you disagree with anything, let me know in the comments. I appreciate you guys all watching, though. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys later.